Behold, the Book of Testimonies presents to you a chapter in the Book of Jolisha. She is in the people business. She is a hustling mama of 3 and a mother of many.
People consider me to be non-judgmental. I consider myself to be the same. However, I used to be very judgmental because I was raised in judgment. Until I started going through a few things of my own, I quickly learned that I couldn't judge others because I never knew where I might end up or what position I might be in my own life. So it's caused me to be much more gracious towards others. Back in 2007, early 2008, I found myself in a position that I never thought that I would be in. I was in a full wrestle against my flesh and my spirit. My flesh wanted out, but God said no. I was young, 23 years old, married with a 1-year-old, and it was tough. Going through a spat one night about a situation that was an ongoing occurrence, I found myself running out of my house in the middle of the night, driving in my car as I did so often just to escape. I would drive wherever, through rain, through darkness, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. in the morning, it didn't matter. I just wanted out. On this particular night, I don't know where I was going. I was hurt, I was torn, I was broken. I knew enough not to harm myself, but I was asking God to take me, to relieve me of this pain that I was feeling. I wanted out. And on this night, I remember driving, crying, eyes blinded with tears, kept saying over and over, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I don't know for how long I drove, but I know where I ended up. Less than a mile away from my home, at my son's in-home daycare. There was a woman. She was an older woman, but she was always kind to me. And this night, I pulled up outside her fence and I ran up through. It was raining. It was raining. I jumped out of my car. I walked through her gate and I knocked on her door. And she came in her nightgown and her bonnet in the middle of the night, and I just collapsed into her arms. I explained what was going on to the best of my abilities, and I just told her I didn't know what to do. And she took me in. She took me to a room that belonged to her daughter. Her daughter was grown at this time, but it was still decorated like a little girl's room, and allowed me to sleep in a twin size bed. And surprisingly, I cried for a long time, but as I think back on it, it wasn't much longer because I was able to rest and sleep. The crazy thing about it, as I think back, my husband didn't even look for me. I spent the night, I remember waking up the next morning, smelling breakfast cooking, coffee brewing. And when I got myself together, I came out. She didn't judge me. She didn't question me. She fed me. And as I sit in this moment, I think that may be my first opportunity to not be judged for possibly the first time in my life. And instead, she gave me grace. She loved on me. I got myself together. I went around the corner back at home to get my son, and I brought him back to daycare, and I stayed there for a great portion of the day. I I, I don't really think about that moment a lot, but I know that it's there. And it helps me to be more cognizant and more open to others, because even though I didn't forcefully try to harm myself, that night I was okay with leaving everything behind. I was raised in church my whole life. So I knew that suicide, or was taught that suicide was a sin. So I didn't want to rightfully sin, but I sure enough begged him to take that away from me. Even in the situation that I was in, I remember crying out saying, "What am I going to do without you?" And he said something that I've never forgotten all these years later. He said, "You better live, because that's what I'm going to do." So that, with a combination of God's grace and mercy and her love, has helped to catapult me moment after moment. When times get tough, I continuously pray and ask God to keep my heart, keep my mind, to remove things that are not good for me, weed out the things that bring any type of thoughts like that ever into my mind again. But I never forget. Shortly after, I began to research, and I saw the semicolon, and people began to utilize that as a sign, getting tattoos and putting it everywhere as a sign that your life is not over, or where the author would put a period, a semicolon is used instead to complete the sentence. And I actually got that tattoo about 4 years ago as a symbol to remind me that my life is not over. As long as I have breath in my body, I'm going to do what I have to do to continue living and to continue showing grace, love, and kindness towards other people, and be non-judgmental, because I received it for myself. The problem was, I wanted to die, but I didn't try to harm myself. I begged God to take me from what was going on physically. It was a constant battle, and I would do things that were reckless or dangerous that I wouldn't tell my son today, who is 16, finna be 17 years old, driving out in the middle of the night while you're upset, hysterical, not in a good place in your mind or spirit. But he kept me. Marital strain. What was the marital strain? Adultery. Getting a phone call that my husband is having an affair, women claiming him to be theirs, but hearing things, not recognizing that, well, recognizing and coming to know that the person that I'm married to is not the person who I thought he was, who he showed himself to be in the beginning, that he could only wear the mask for so long. There was speculation before we got married. Oh no, this is just my friend. We're just friends. That's not the case. He loves you. And me being a 20-year-old, 21-year-old woman, I'm going to believe what you say. There's nothing going on. We're just friends. So we go ahead with the wedding. We go ahead with the marriage. We had a nice big wedding. Everybody's invited. A beautiful time, a beautiful ceremony. Pictures, photographer, videographer, everything. This was 2005. And shortly after, now, because we didn't live together, so now that we live together, I began to see your patterns. I began to see things that I couldn't see when we were not living together. And now I have questions. And you don't really have any answers except for I'm tripping. It's not what I think it is. And even going directly to the source of who I think it is, she's also telling me we're just friends. Things didn't feel right. I'm a feeler. I can feel when a mood changes. I can feel when something is different. And so I ask, and the answer is always nothing. Everything's fine. Oh, I'm going to work, staying out late. Oh, I'm hanging out, but it's just not aligning with what you're saying. Coming home smelling like perfume, but knowing something's not right. It was one night he came in after a party, after hanging out. I'm home with our son, and you come in disheveled, not your normal self. It looks like you've been in a fight. You have a bruise on your knuckle saying you slammed your hand in the door, but I didn't really buy it. It was like, that doesn't make much sense. You smell like alcohol and you really don't even drink. Disheveled, unlike yourself. And you kind of just want to go to bed. You don't want to talk about anything. You just want to go to bed as you are. And I'm like, no, I have listened, I have trusted, I have prayed, I have cried, I have endured long enough. I'm going to get down to the bottom of it. I go, there's his phone is in the pocket. So I look at the phone, and one of the last persons that he was talking to was this same person. So I leave my house. The baby's fine because he's in there with his daddy. And I drive away around the corner and I call, and she's thinking it's going to be him, but it's me. And then I ask her, what is going on between you and my husband? And she says, that ain't none of your husband. That's my man. So all the time before, it was, no, he loves you. He loves you, Joe. Everything's okay. Like there's nothing going on. When I confronted her in the past, him and her, and this night, that story changed. He's mine. And she began to tell me information regarding what they had been doing and how everybody knew about it. And yeah, it sent me in a frenzy, a spiral. I became disheveled, undone. I lost it. My mind went everywhere. And I immediately went back home and confronted him about the situation. And yes, I ended up packing his things because in that moment I felt like I deserved better. But some kind of way, the elders, that's your husband. You got to pray, stay, work it out. So essentially, the issue that was present before we ever got married was the same reason why we divorced almost 15 years later. I endured for years until one day I truly recognized that he would never allow me to treat him the way that I was allowing him to treat me. God had told me back in 2015 that he was going to break my heart in order to get what he needed from me. I had no idea that that was going to be the ending or dissolution of my marriage. I had mastered the art of smile, though your heart is aching. I had to go through a lot of healing, coaching. I even went to therapy for a few sessions, a lot of self-work in order to become the person that I am today. And that person is working to change the narrative of hurt people to heal people. And I do that in my work as a life coach practitioner, certified life coach. I help women to go through their self-love journeys and recognize that they are enough, and to also recognize that it's okay to say no, to create healthy boundaries, to cultivate healthy relationships, and to not allow anything that they don't feel worthy of to continue to take place in their lives. A lot of times we already know what we don't want. It's getting to what we do want that we have to figure out. I have been able to turn my pain into my purpose. I always knew that there was more for me and that God was going to do a work through me. I just had no idea what it was. And through the breaking of my heart, I had to learn who I am and to be okay with that. And Grace Journey is not only coaching, it's my life. It's who I am and it's what I embody. We're all on a grace journey. Grace is unmerited, undeserved, but we receive it anyway. So I teach people how to extend grace to themselves and others on this journey, which is never ending. It's a roller coaster sometimes, up and down, round and round, in and out, but just knowing that you're going to be okay. You can make it as long as you stay true to yourself and true to your heart. This has been a chapter from the Book of Jolisha. Now I am happy, healed, and whole on my graced journey to helping other women know their worth, love themselves, create healthy boundaries, cultivate healthy relationships, and to say no. To say no.